Campbell with Daily Encouragement, and I had a few minutes this morning and wanted to jump on here and share with you guys some things I've been learning from a really insightful book, Bringing Up Boys: Practical Advice and Encouragement for Those Shaping the Next Generation of Men by Dr. James Dobson. He shared some information in this book that really got me thinking as to the source, I suppose, of the confusion that's been going on among men and women, and basically devaluing both roles, and neither one are significant. A woman can be a man and a man can be a woman, and there's nobody has any role to play per se. And so anyway, I'm going to share some things with you guys really quick, and I thought it was just very interesting, so I'm just going to jump into this thing, you guys. So check this out. He was saying, back in the 1970s, I'm just going to read from the book, okay, you guys? So check this out. In the 1970s, when a goofy new idea took root, a small but noisy band of feminists began insisting that the sexes were identical except for their reproductive apparatus, and that any uniqueness and temperament or behavior resulted from patriarchal cultural biases. It was a radical concept that lacked any scientific support, except that which was flawed and politically motivated. Nevertheless, the campaign penetrated the entire culture. Suddenly, professors and professionals who should have known better began nodding in agreement. No doubt about it, males and females were redundant. Parents had been wrong about their kids for at least 5,000 years. The media ran with the notion, and the word unisex found its way into the language of the enlightened. Anyone who challenged the new dogma, as I did in a 1975 book entitled What Wives Wish Their Husbands Knew About Women, was branded as sexist or something worse. The feminist movement then took a new and dangerous turn. Its leaders began trying to redesign the way children were being raised, which is why the issue is of concern to us today, all these years later. Mind you, this book was written in 2001. Television talk show host Phil Donahue and dozens of wannabes told parents day after day that their daughters were victims of terrible sexist bias and that their sons should be raised more like girls. There was great urgency to their message. Things had to change immediately, they said. Donahue's feminist girlfriend and later wife, Marlo Thomas, co-authored a best-selling book about the same time titled Free to Be You and Me, which the publishers described as the first real guide to non-sexist child rearing. It urged boys to play with dolls and tea sets and told them they could be anything they wanted to be, including, no kidding, grandmas and mommies. It featured dozens of poems and stories about role reversals, such as mothers nailing shingles on the roof, building new shelves in the family room, and working with cement. Meanwhile, father was in the kitchen making breakfast. Every effort was made to teach children that fathers made great moms and mothers were pretty tough dudes. The book sold several million copies, and the movement had only just begun. Now, here's another person that he mentioned. Germaine Greer, author of The Female Eunuch, was even more extreme. She said that traditional family had castrated women. She believed mothers should be less nurturing of their daughters because to treat them gently and kindly would reinforce sexual stereotypes and make them more dependent and feminine. Greer also insisted that children are better off being raised by institutions rather than parents. Shut the front door. Good grief. It is difficult to believe today that her book offering those similarly outrageous views also soared to the top of all the bestsellers lists. That illustrates just how culturally dominant radical feminism was at the time. Perhaps the most influential of the early feminists was Gloria Steinem, founder of the National Organization for Women and editor of Miss Magazine. Here's a sampling of her perspective on marriage and child rearing. We've had a lot of people in this country who have had the courage to raise their daughters more like their sons, which is great because it means they're more equal. But there are many fewer people who have had courage to raise their sons more like their daughters, and that's what needs to be done. We need to stop raising boys to think that they need to prove their masculinity by being controlling or by not showing emotion or by not being little girls. You can ask boys, what if you were a little girl? They get very upset at the very idea that they might be this inferior thing. They've already got this idea that in order to be boys, they have to be superior to girls, and that's the problem. Marriage is not an equal partnership. I mean, You lose your name, your credit rating, your legal residence, and socially, you're treated as if his identity were yours. I can't imagine being married. If everybody has to get married, then clearly it is a prison, not a choice. And then it says Steinman married in 2000. All women are supposed to want children, but I can never drum up any feelings of regret. So then it says, think for a moment about the quotes from Steinman, Greer, and the other early feminists. Most of them were never married, didn't like children, and deeply resented men. Yet they advised millions of women about how to raise their children, and especially how to produce healthy boys. There's no evidence that Steinman or Greer had ever had any significant experience with children of either sex. Isn't it interesting that the media, to my knowledge, never honed in on the incongruity? And isn't it sad that these women were allowed to twist and warp the attitudes of a generation of kids? Isn't that crazy, you guys? Look, I know that a lot of people like, oh, we don't want to listen to this kind of stuff. But you know what? If you are looking at what's going on and you're asking yourself, what the heck? Do you realize how important it is to understand where these ideas came from? How in the world are we going to combat something we don't even know what it is? Some people are like, where did this come from? Why is this happening? This guy is telling us. He's sharing with us the ideas and the minds of the people that have shaped culture, right? And if we don't know this, then how are we going to deal with it? So there's another thing I want to share with you guys that was in here that was very interesting because it's happening right now. It says there's also a new source of confusion emanating from the powerful gay and lesbian agenda. Its propagandists are teaching a revolutionary view of sexuality called gender feminism, which insists that sex assignment is irrelevant. You guys, is that not happening today? Genetics can be simply overridden. What matters is the gender selected for us by parents when we are babies, or the sex role we choose for ourselves later in life. Mary Brown Parley articulated this perspective in Psychology Today. The sex assigned to a baby at birth is as much a social decision as a recognition of biological fact. Another feminist writer expressed it like this. Although many people think that men and women are the natural expression of a genetic blueprint, gender is a product of human thought and culture, a social construction that creates the true nature of all individuals. Therefore, if we protect children from social and religious conditioning, people will be free to move into and out of existing gender roles according to their preferences. Taking that concept to its illogical conclusion, the feminists and homosexual activists want to dissolve the traditional roles of mothers and fathers and, in time, eliminate such terms as wife, husband, son, daughter, sister, brother, manhood, womanhood, boy, girl, masculine, and feminine. These references to sexual identity are being replaced with gender-neutral terms such as significant other, spouse, parent, child, and sibling. Clearly, there are serious implications here for mothers and fathers. All right. So let me see if there's anything else. You guys, that is what I wanted to share with you out of here. I thought that was very interesting. You know, that back in the 1970s, you have these crazy, extreme feminist women who've never had children, never been married, all of a sudden having all this wisdom and knowledge and understanding, giving it to people. And you guys, did you know that there's such thing as wisdom that is evil? Did you know that there is, wisdom is knowing the best way and the best ends to create a potential end? But did you know there's another way to do that too? And it's funny how everybody was like, wow, this was so great. And so anyway, I did not know that. Okay. You guys, I told you I'm only 38, but I did not know that these people back in the 70s, these women were taking these ideas and now we're seeing them come to fruition today. Right. So I wanted to share that with you guys just to kind of give you a little bit of, some foundation as to what we're dealing with right now. And, we got choices to make, right? Isn't it funny how they say that institutions and not parents should be raising the children? I mean, is that not what's happening right now? Can we just be honest that most people do not raise their children? The institution does. Send them off to public school. Look, I understand if that's what you need to do, but if you are not happy with how your kid is turning out and you don't like how they're being influenced, then you do have a choice to remove them. All right. As I've told you guys before, you might have to completely reverse your lifestyle in order to have the life that you really want. you may have to, do that because you're like, well, I don't know what else to do, but you hate it, right? You don't want your kids to have to go through that. Well, you might have to downsize. You might have to make different decisions, right? Who's going to influence our children, you or them? We already know what their agenda is. So, take your role seriously as a parent. It's just funny how these days, people, it's like they resent having children. They just, then stop having kids, quit having sex, and then you don't have to worry about it anymore, right? That's the other thing that's crazy is, take responsibility for your decisions that you've made. Even if you weren't conscious when you made them, now it's like, okay, what do you want to do? What kind of kids do you want to have? How are your kids being influenced by the people that are, influencing them? And if you don't like it, do something about it. Live your life, be congruent. Congruent is your values are lined up with your actions. Okay. You're not living against yourself. You're not living in, you're not living contrary to what's important to you. You're not compromising. Okay. So, I'm only speaking from experience, you guys. I've told you that me and my husband, we have sacrificed for me to be home for the last 15 years. We lived in a travel trailer for a year and a half with our 9, with our children. How many kids we have at the time? We lived in the travel trailer for a year and a half, and we had 4 kids at the time. Most people would never do that. You know how many people would be divorced having to go through that? Okay. My husband ate popcorn for like however many months it was for a time, and we knew the cost of me staying home with the kids, but for me being home with them was more important than us just having a big house or having this or that. We have a big house now. I'll tell you what, we went through the process and now we're in a different situation, but there's different ways to go about it is what I'm trying to say. You don't have to do what you're doing right now. Okay. God makes a way. I told you guys just the other day, start asking him for what you want, but it might require you to completely live your life in a different way than you've ever even thought. All right. And so anyway, I just wanted to share that with you guys. I thought it was very interesting. The book is called Bringing Up Boys from Dr. James Dobson. And, I still got how many, 2 younger boys. And then I've got a 21-year-old son. I've got a 17-year-old son. And so I want to, know how to interact with them the best way possible. And so it was just interesting that he had shared where these ideas had come from as far as, what we're dealing with right now, the gender confusion, basically devaluing both sexes and all this crazy stuff we got going on. So it's good to know where the ideas came from because then we know who to hold accountable, right? And so anyway, you guys, I'm going to get off here. You guys have an awesome rest of the day, and I will talk to you soon.